everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. Yes, I'm back. You've heard a lot of Danette author corners as late, but now we're back doing a little classic team podcast. We're going to be doing a podcast talking about finding innovation, and if you listen to our last Concept Sandbox, you'll understand that we're going to be having a bit of fun with that conversation. But before we do any of that, I'm going to talk to my partner and person who's sharing a screen with me today, Kanika. Kanika, how's your week been?
My week has been really nice. The weather's been good. I've come back to work after a little bit of a break. So I'm just getting into the rhythm of that, but it's been good.
Well, great to have you on, and great to have you on for our second inaugural Concept Sandbox podcast. Danette, how are you going? You were next on the call. How are things?
Yeah, good. It's hot here too, not as hot as Melbourne by the sounds of it. Had a bit of a sad week because we think the snake got one of the chickens, so we've now down to one chicken, which is very, very sad. But other than that, it's been a good week. Yes, I don't know what happened to her, but she was sitting on the little eggs till the end. Poor little thing.
Wow. So sad.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Yeah, and we love the chickens out at the farm there, so that's a shame. Graham, how are you going this week?
Hi, Jess. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. We love the chickens. We don't love the snakes. Sorry, reptile lovers out there, but we don't. I've just realised that I need to get some white headphones. I've sort of just broken up the whole, white background.
Now,
happy Friday.
Yes. Happy Friday, and even though this is being released on a Monday, we're recording it on a Friday, so it's more casual vibes, and that's what we like at the Magical Learning Podcast. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing Concept Sandbox, and how this works is we're going to be talking about a big problem, which is finding innovation, and some of our insights around that. We're also going to be looking at a business problem, which we'll get to in a second, but before we do any of that, we need a mythical location or person. Now, I'm going to be looking at Kanika because not only is Kanika the first time on the Concept Sandbox, but you also have a master's in creative writing, so you're a great person to ask about this. You're also a very avid reader. But so the idea being that there's business problems in across different contexts, and for us to have a bit of fun looking at one, we're going to look at a bit of a mythical context and add a bit of fun with that. So, Kanika, do you have a context that we will all know that's a little bit mythical?
I was going to say either Hogwarts, because that's pretty universal. I'm sure everyone knows that.
That sounds really good, but let me I'll just quickly explain this to John, because John, you've just jumped on. How are we going, John? It's been a little while. How's things?
Been a while. Yeah, life's good. It's a beautiful day.
That's it. What have you been up to since we last caught up?
Had a grandson, another grandson. So, yeah, he'd be about 3 weeks old now, I think, living up in Brisbane, living his best life, doing two parts. He hasn't got a job yet, which, I don't know, they should have kicked him out by now and made that happen. But, apparently you can't send him to the salt mines this early.
Maybe the salt Minecraft might be accepting at this age.
Is that true, John, or is that just an assumption?
Which part?
That you can't send them to the salt mines at under 1 month of age,
Well,
surely.
Yeah, I don't know. Surely you can. I mean, he's got to be good for something.
And look, any viewers, any listeners from any of the various Department of Children's Services, I may not have been serious.
Well, John, what we were just discussing is today we're going to be doing our Concept Sandbox. So what this is, we're going to look at a business problem, but we're going to look at it in a sort of mythical context while we're having another conversation. We're hopefully going to have all this sort of flow together. It worked last time, and we're hoping it's going to work again. So we're going to be talking about finding innovation, and Kanika's actually just given us the context of Hogwarts, and the business problem that I've brought, that's just a general business problem we'll be looking at, is that Hogwarts wants to open a new branch in a new area, but they don't know how to find customers. Okay, so that's what we're going to be. Just keep that in the back of your mind while we're having a conversation about finding innovation. So I might start with you, Danette, here. Danette, did you have any thoughts around the concept of finding innovation?
So I actually looked up the difference between creativity and innovation because I was sort of like, are they the same? And I found out that creativity is about coming up with new ideas, like brand new ideas, whereas innovation is sort of putting them into action and moving forward. So a little bit like continuous improvement. So I'm thinking, given we're in Hogwarts and they are thinking that they are going to open a new branch in a new area, I reckon that they should make a spell to create something innovative for that new branch. Just saying.
So they need to kind of, you're saying it's not just about creativity for this new branch of Hogwarts. They need to add a little bit of some building on some skills they've already utilized and build out a new custom spell
Yes.
for this new this new branch of Hogwarts. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
No,
Fair enough.
that's
A
the
new
longer
spell for
answer.
innovation, isn't that cheating?
Innovative. Isn't that innovative in itself? Wouldn't the spell be innovative? Because every time we create one, maybe it's different. I'm curious, I don't know, and if I can perhaps just get some clarification from someone. I recently attended a certain movie theatre in Canberra with my son and sat completely transfixed for an impressive amount of time to watch all of the Lord of the Rings movies. I've also seen all of the Hobbits movies, and I can't remember hearing about this Hogwarts thing, so what is it? Just kidding.
No, you're okay. I was gonna say, I think like a spell, yes, but like we have to be specific about what kind of spell we're gonna do, right? Because that's a pretty broad thing. Because you can use a spell to like raise your voice and also, control someone's mind. So what are we doing with the spell? I think what I would do is I would create, like, I would do a spell or like I would charm a bunch of flyers into ending up in people's mailboxes, because the point is to get new students to come to this magic school, right? So I'd charm a bunch of flyers to end up in people's mailboxes with who have like illegibly aged young witches and wizards, so they can attend their school. And I guess until they like enroll, maybe the flyers keep showing up. Like it just annoys parents into enrolling their kids into the new branch of Hogwarts. Yeah.
So there's that concept of flooding people with kindness. You're flooding them with flyers in this case, but magical ones that are specific to the area.
I mean, think about it, because if we're looking at, like, again, in the first Harry Potter film, when he ignores his Hogwarts letter, it literally floods the entire house before he accepts it. So it's just low-key coercion.
Technically, he didn't ignore the letter, though. It was the auntie and uncle who refused to allow him to have it. It was coming through to override what they were doing. Sorry, I don't know too much about Harry Potter.
No, that's good innovation there as well. I think that this is a good concept of innovating, because we're using the marketing technique from the first movie, but we're turning it more into a flyer type situation, and we're adding a little bit of magic. So I'm already liking this. Hopefully people can take away something from this part of the conversation so far.
So, okay,
Sorry, John.
not having done this before, I've got the idea of they hold I'm going to use the wrong word, but a festival, a carnival, a competition where, they get, different kids from different schools to come in and they compete, and Harry ends up winning, of course, because he wins everything. Somehow engaging into the community to get your brand out there. Now, the other thought I had was, and I don't know whether it was this movie or another one, but wasn't there a projection of a big head that someone ended up flying through, and then it all breaks apart, or, and whether that was, the whatever who can't be named was in the sky and someone flew through. But yeah, getting out there, getting promoted with what you're good at in order to get people to come on board and promote yourself.
That's a great idea, almost like a fate, kind of. Seal your fate at the fate of this new magic school. I like it, John. Reach out to the community in a different way. Have an event that can display some of this stuff.
Yeah, because there's going to be people who have a need for whatever it is you do, and whether it's other magical kids out there that don't know what to do, but by having something that they can come to and find out information, like a fate, would be one way of garnering interest.
This sounds a bit silly. But I was going to say, cool alumni tattoos, which you can only get once you graduate Hogwarts. And it's kind of like this weird, exclusive, secretive club, because then everybody wants to be a part of it. So you can do it the opposite way completely, which is just be very hush hush about it, which makes people want in more.
Love that idea. Riffing off that, could it be that the new place in the new area, it's part of an innovation contest? So maybe they haven't even identified yet where it's going to be, and so they go out to the world and go, okay, come up with something really innovative for our new location, and maybe that's how they become part of the alumni and get the tattoo.
Well, actually, Danette, this leans right into what I wanted to bring to the conversation. So I'm going to build off of that a little bit, which is sort of talking about finding innovation and looking at the different ways that people kind of look at innovation. I wanted to bring in an example that I've selected, which is Einstein. So this is about different ways of thinking and how those different thinkings can help people. So Einstein, when he was coming up with theories about gravity, he did some thought experiments, and I'll explain them to you here. So they were about someone in a windowless elevator, okay? If they're standing and that elevator is stationary, or if it's moving up, that essentially feels very similar to that person because the gravity is down and they're being pulled up the other way. So all the weight is going down to the bottom of the elevator. And so in those two situations, gravity acts in a similar way. But to sort of do the opposite of that, if an elevator is in free fall and everything is sort of floating, that is not dissimilar to being in an elevator in outer space, okay? And so those two things are actually they're sort of similar because gravity is not interacting in the same way. And what Einstein used these thought experiments to do is actually build out a lot of his models of gravity. But what I think is interesting is how simple those thought exercises are. They're just someone in an elevator in both situations. And so what could happen with that innovation contest is it may not even be about necessarily finding specifically one type of innovation that you're looking for, but maybe more about the actual type of thinking that people are doing. Yeah, to put that into the context of Hogwarts, perhaps they have a challenge or they have a set of some resources on a table and they say, hey, who can build the most intricate little tower or something like that? And they're not actually looking for the height of the tower. They're looking for the creativity that's put into that. And maybe that's how they are looking for some innovation.
But yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's trying to get people to think outside of what, the norm is. And people are looking for that. And how do you find that? If you're going to be a coffee shop, what is your point of difference? If you're going to be a Hogwarts, what is your point of difference to the others? What gives you that innovation, or what is it that allows your staff, your customers to be innovative, or what allows you to be innovative?
I think that's almost a great jumping off point because that does come back to the topic of finding innovation. So what are some good systems that you can build up within a business to actually encourage this type of innovation?
I feel like just giving people time during work hours to work on like their own thing or their own project, whether like they have a hobby, whether they have an art practice on the side, or whether it's as simple as, I guess, giving people like a paid hour a week to just do whatever they want in a workplace. And I find that like kind of pushes creativity a little bit. Like I worked somewhere once where they would pay us for an hour extra a week if we just came in and worked on our own writing. So you could get paid for an hour to do your own writing, and that made me do more writing. It made me like fully actually start doing that even when that system stopped, because it was something they couldn't afford doing after a certain point. But even when that system stopped, I found that I kept doing my practice because I had like a sort of system in place to enable me to do it and like some incentive to do it. So that could be one thing.
I've read that being outside or being in front of large windows is a really good way to open your brain up. So like Steve Jobs used to go for walking meetings, And I find sometimes just going outside with the notebook is so much better than being inside sort of a man-made structure. So that could be a way to, encourage people outside, get a bit of vitamin D, but also start to think a little bit more creatively as well. Plus the pipe cleaners.
I was also going to say, someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of time doing something, just like find the laziest person to solve a problem. They'll find the quickest way to do it.
Very true.
I love
You
that.
know, I was just going to say, as long as the job is done and as long as you're getting there through like a non-like illegal means, like, how does it matter if it's like a quick fix? As long as it's like a reasonable quick fix. But yeah, like sometimes the laziest people will find the quickest way to fix an issue or come up with a solution to something because they just don't want to be there.
And that would explain why I've been the go-to person for solutions forever. I hadn't realised that. Thanks, Kanu. I feel so much better. I got really hung up on just taking this whole thing far too literally early on when we were talking about this idea of an entity, a business, an enterprise wanting to open up a new branch somewhere else, and of course I went straight back to why are we doing it? And then I got a little bit sidetracked by Kaneka talking about just having the magically reappearing pamphlets. And I started thinking, well, why wouldn't you just do that with $100 notes? Just saying. Pamphlet money. Anywho, but I think
that's good innovation right there, Graham.
And for those of you out there thinking, I wonder if I could do that at a Kinko's. I don't know, but you probably should not. Just saying. Are Kinko still around? I have no idea. Whatever. One of the things that did sort of... there's a lot wrong with my head at the moment. It's been a very interesting morning. I've blown most of my AV equipment, I think, by overwatering a pot plant. It's a fun exercise. What happens when water drips onto a power board? Things happen. Going back to the sandbox thing. So if we decide that we want to open a new branch, we want to expand, because if we're a business, we should at some point, I guess, be looking at growth. Otherwise, if you don't grow, you die. Sort of, if you're not growing, you are in some way dying. And just because I was thinking far too literally about this, but I started thinking about, is there a spell? And I don't know, the HP aficionados out there might know one, that we can use to clone people. So who's going to staff the new Hogwarts? Because I think that's a huge part of, if we think about what made Hogwarts successful in the first place, what makes it the place to be, if you're going to get on at, is it station 9.5? Isn't it terrible that I remember something from a movie? What's wrong with me?
3/4.
Is it? Thank you. I don't remember
John,
that
a
much.
low-key Harry Potter fan?
Nah.
He just walked straight into that one. So if we look at our business at the moment and we think, well, this is what got us to here, and that's fantastic, but we want to get to the next stage. And expansion is helpful in lots of ways. How do we recreate what we've got here? Oh, it's a dead one of those. But how do we recreate what we've got here in the new place? I sort of refer or relate that back to ML and think that a lot of our success in the past has been because I wasn't around. But it's been about the people in the business. And I know, I can see now, like Monday week when this thing comes out, there are already a bunch of people watching the video who are nodding, yeah, that's absolutely right, Graham. How do we recreate or maintain that culture, that vibe, that feel in the new branch of Hogwarts so that we're going to get enough students? How do we attract new teachers? And because there's always a risk of, well, what if we just take, John, give me some names of teachers at Hogwarts, please. Anyone? Dumbledore. Is
Snape.
Dumbledore a thing?
Snape.
No? Snape? It sounds too much like Snake, but that makes sense. If we just take all of the good people from where we are and put them in the new branch, then we are potentially degrading what we already have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I may be coming at this far too literally, but I am now spent, so discuss.
I would say they have magic. So there is a thing in this world called a portkey, where you literally just touch an object and it takes you to a different place. It's like, I'm sure it's like a 3-second journey. So I feel like the teachers can sort of work at the other school as well till they like find the right people to train and take over, a good little transition of power. But initially, the same teachers get paid a bit more to do work across both schools because, again, there's magic. They can go there. There's also something called a time turner, which allows them to manipulate time. So that's also another option. So, like, if they're cutting 2 classes too close, they can, like, wind the clock back a little bit, do things like that. Nothing's impossible.
Sounds like a great way to cheat on a timesheet there with the time turner. Be like, I actually did 19 classes last hour.
I've got just a counterpoint, I guess, to what Graham was saying, and I don't disagree about but if you want innovation, do you really want to be cloning what you've got? Because aren't you then just replicating what you've got? You're not innovating. So if you're pulling all the teachers out of Hogwarts to go into whatever the next one is, all you're doing is replicating potentially trying to replicate like for like, and you never will because the environments are different, the teachers are different, the students are different. But if you want that innovation, you need to refresh your thinking, your staff, you need to refresh things around you in order to get some innovation going. And I get trying to replicate, absolutely, but I also get the need to. So in terms of growing the business, my son's a landscaper and he knows he's never going to grow his business because he likes to control. I don't know where he gets that from, but his mother has a lot to blame, I believe. But if he wants to grow business, you've got to allow people some authority and independence, which means new people, new ideas, new thinking.
I was just going to say, so what if we innovate and say that, the normal school day is not what we're going to do in this new place. So we're going to do it shorter. We're going to try new ways of teaching and learning to actually experiment with things that maybe then we can take back into the other parts of the business, but actually use this as a little bit of a test sandbox, just like this podcast.
Didn't the CIA do that with LSD back in the 50s?
No idea.
Well, Danette, I like this idea. I actually want to build off it a little bit because what if, when you think about Hogwarts, it's built in the model of like a British private school in a lot of ways, in a lot of its structure, and how it's actually the architecture of the actual place. And so I wonder if putting it in a new country, maybe they think, where's there a lot of people? I would say India and China are 2 places that you could expand into. That would be good opportunities. How to embrace some of the culture there? Because, obviously Hogwarts, England, British private school. How do we actually embrace some of the culture in, whatever country we're moving into to add to that innovation and sort of create its own flavor while using some of the strengths of the original Hogwarts?
I guess another thing to add is how this could be differentiated is the regular Hogwarts is sort of a 11 years old onwards kind of schooling system. Maybe this new one is like a summer school / primary school, because it's a whole other market that like these sort of boarding schools haven't tapped. So it's just like a different age group, a different time of year, so for example, people like in this world, if we're looking like an orphan like Harry Potter, not ideal for him to go back to his like his caretakers who are his uncle and auntie. Why can't he just do summer school instead? At the other Hogwarts.
I'm thinking that the summer school could have nap pods. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways we could, because, kids get tired, doesn't matter how old they are, so having the odd nap pod for people to go and have a break and learn more effectively because they've had a break. I love the idea.
That's good, bringing in modern educational principles into sort of an ancient school. I like it a lot. I like that we're doing a really nice board meeting for the Hogwarts shareholders here to give them some ideas about what we can kind of bring as the new development team to what I'm going to be calling Newt Sweat, because I feel like if we're just going off the theme of the word Hogwarts, I think we can call this new one Newt Sweat. Does anybody have any thoughts on just finding innovation outside of this context? So just the concept of finding innovation and what that means to them.
I was going to say, I think, at least in my perspective, finding innovation is finding, I guess, an exciting way to solve a problem, just like finding like the easiest way to do something with like the least risk involved. I think something that comes to my mind recently is Jez and I were overseas and we were staying in like an old Parisian building that had like a 7-floor spiral staircase walk up that had really uneven stairs. And so like we had our suitcases with us, which were like 20 kilos each. So it's like quite a dangerous like climb up and climb down. So while we were heading back, while we had to leave the Airbnb, I refused to do that walk down with our suitcases the way they were. So we sort of just like, I just figured that what we do is we had like these packing cubes, but basically we came up with a way to take like the suitcases down basically empty. And one that would like cause our bodies minimum damage, and like it was the easiest. We basically just like sort of dismantled our suitcases in like an organized way and then went down, and once we got to the lobby we just filled our suitcases in. So it was like the most painless and safest way to exit that building. So to me, that was like a fun thing to do. I was like thinking about it for 3 days before we had to check out, because I was like, we are not walking down those stairs with those bags because it's too dangerous, But yeah, that was to me innovative. It was fun. It just felt like a problem to solve and like what was the best way to do it. And I was kind of just like, how do we do it without physically injuring ourselves? How do we do it without taking multiple trips? And getting everything down in one go. And I guess, how do we do it without making like a spectacle of ourselves once we get to the ground floor?
It's a great example.
And we managed. It was successful.
Also a really good example of, just going back to your point before, Kanika, about sometimes you just get the laziest person to come up with a solution, because mine would have been literally just suitcase over the edge of the railing.
I did think of that.
It will be there when we get there in the end. When we get to the bottom of the steps, it'll still be there. I just completely lost my train of thought there, but I had something really, really clever that I wanted to share, and now it's sadly gone. Actually, it was one of the points that Kanika mentioned earlier about, and this in part comes back to the idea that we need some bandwidth, we need some time and space. And part of this is also, I think, a physical space, but we need time and space to be able to think a little more creatively, to innovate. It's really hard to do when we're massively under the pump. And Kanika, when you were saying before that the job you had at one stage, where you were in the business paid you, an extra hour to come in and just do stuff, but work on your own project sort of thing. And it reminded me of Google, and Google very proudly used to talk about the 80-20 rule, where they used to pay their employer, and they said basically 20% of your time you can work on anything, which it sounds quite altruistic, except it actually isn't, because the two biggest innovations or creations, if you like, the two biggest products that came out of that 20% me time have made Google billions. So it's like, on the one hand you can do anything, but on the other hand we own it. So I think extending that and changing the model so you can do anything but then you own it is probably a much better way of going about it. And if I can really just once, and then I'll give up on the whole thing, go back to the whole linear, literal sort of situation where we're looking at creating or opening a new branch somewhere else and expanding. I still get stuck on why. And I think in part this goes back to John's points before, which I thought were great points about, well, if we're just going to rinse and repeat, then we're just replicating what we've already got, and there's no real innovation in that at all, which is absolutely true. And it's been the business model for so many businesses over the last few centuries, it's not funny. This is how we scale. We just take this. It's like, think of any fast food chain that's still around. Lots of other businesses, it literally, you go to any store and it looks and feels and smells exactly the same, which is an innovation. So I wonder what the impact of profit has, and this is sort of potential or expected profit, how that impacts our creativity or our innovation. Because if I were thinking of Hogwarts, okay, we're going to open a new Hogwarts somewhere else, India, China. I was actually thinking Antarctica. If we're going to be innovative, let's go cold. Why not? Why not? And mainly because I want to visit. So what do we need to do to create an environment where we can really think, in an innovative way about how we might do this, and get at least identify all of the current restrictions we have in terms of our way of thinking. And I think this also goes back to Jess's point about Einstein, that guy called Einstein, whoever he was, and his whole thought experiment thing. So how do we create an environment where it's perfectly okay for us, whether we own the business or whether we're part of the team, to be like truly innovative and to think completely outside of the box that we'd normally operate in? It's a very long-winded answer, or question, or both. Goodbye.
I was just, again, going to just build off of what Graham said. It's easier also to take risks when you're doing creative things or working on a project when you're not afraid of making a mistake. So it should be important that the environment that you are being innovative in doesn't reprimand you for an idea not working out. Because I've worked a job where I've been afraid of making mistakes, and then I've worked a job where I'm not too concerned about making a mistake, and I feel like I always do better at a job that I'm not too concerned at making a mistake on, even if it's not like a systemic reprimand or whatever, even if it's just someone on your own team or the person you're directly reporting to, if they're pointing out oh, that failed, or oh, that didn't work. But I think another part about innovation that we need to remember is that you're not going to be able to do it if you're not okay with things not working out. So I think that's another really important part of it, creating an environment where people feel safe to make mistakes.
Love that, and totally agree. So I had a couple that came off what Graham talked about. So I reckon creating a space where people can work to their body clocks. So I know my brain is on fire from 4 till about 8:30 a.m. And so being able to perhaps modify when kids or whoever are going to come into this new thing so it works to when their brain works, as opposed to just the structured hours which come with the current system. I thought maybe one thing I like to do to create innovative ideas is to connect two different things. So it might be, what do I do if I've got a rock and a butterfly? And how can I combine them to create something new? And when we think of a rock, we think of it's heavy, but what if it's not a heavy rock? What if it's made of air? And maybe it's something that the butterfly can attach to it and carry things in. I don't know, I'm just making this up. But coming up with sort of ways to connect two ideas. And the thing that, and I really like that bit about the looking at the restrictions that might be in place. I really love the phrase, yes and. So if someone comes up with an innovative idea, to Kanika's point about making it safe, rather than going, oh, that wouldn't work or whatever, we go yes and. And so we add to people's ideas rather than take away from their ideas.
Yeah. Graham's written, or combining water and a live power board is an interesting innovation there, which we like. I just wanted to say I actually had an innovative idea I think that they could implement, which is that, you know how we were talking about port keys before and how you can kind of travel to anywhere? what if this new Hogwarts isn't actually in a localized location, but you're sent port keys that take you to outdoor environments, like what you're saying, going to Antarctica for a lesson, go to a forest for a lesson, because you said learning outside is better as well there, Danette. Could the school actually be not an actual structure, but instead a series of lessons, not unlike a Zoom class, but instead of being on Zoom, you're actually traveling there, and then having the 1 hour lesson, then head back.
Love that idea.
Well, we're getting towards the end here, but I did want to get some final thoughts from everyone. So, Danette, I might start with you then. Any final thoughts on finding innovation and some solutions for this that we've come up with for this new Hogwarts?
I love this idea and the whole thing about having a growth mindset. So we can make whatever happens if we're all open to it. So the yes and I really like, and I liked your example, Jez, with Einstein and how he sort of came up with gravity by just thinking about someone in an elevator in different situations. So yeah, no, it was really good. Really interesting conversation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Danette. Great insights. Graham, I'll go to you. Any final thoughts on today's conversation and the new branch of Hogwarts?
I think probably the keys for me are acknowledging that to be really innovative, we need time and space. The points have been made about being outside. We also know that we can be more creative when we're in very different or very new environments. So I love this idea of just having a port key, whatever that is, and send me one. And literally being able to transport myself physically to somewhere else and then somewhere else again. And I think the other thing that's important, if we really want to help ourselves and others be innovative, is recognising it's important to remove restrictions, which sometimes can be purely self-imposed in terms of how we might think about something, and make it safe to not succeed.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that, Graham. John, any final thoughts on finding innovation in this new branch of Hogwarts?
Yeah, I've probably got two, and one of them, the first one revolves around the replicate or innovate, and just two organisations, and I think of Starbucks, who being the coffee shop in America, and they came to Australia and they opened a bunch of stores and virtually fell over because they didn't understand the market, and they were doing what they did over there thinking it would work. It didn't. And then you think of McDonald's, who are worldwide, but from what I understand, you go to a McDonald's in America and the taste or the product is very slightly different somewhere else in the world. So it's not exactly like for like, it's modifying to that cultural need. The other one I would also say is go find someone you don't like. Go talk to them, that you don't get on with. Because if you think about it, you go into a relationship and you're going to have kids and you want someone who's on the same page as you, that the way we're going to discipline our kids or the way we're going to bring them up is this. You want that like for like. And we naturally gravitate towards people like that. If you want to challenge yourself, go find someone you just really don't get on with, because they're not going to think like you. They're going to actually have a crack at you or confront you on things, and they might actually challenge you in a really positive way that you hadn't thought about, or challenge your ideas. So yeah, find people you don't like.
That's great. Find people that you would almost use the word, call them a Hogwart, but instead, in this context, you're actually learning from them, So I love that, John. Thank you for that. And good to see you again on the pod.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And Kanika, any final thoughts on finding innovation and this new branch of Hogwarts?
Yes, I would say that with innovation, it's obviously space, safety, and solution. I was thinking solutioning. Solution mode? I don't know. But yeah, I think it's these three S's, where it's space, safety, and solutions. And I think that's what I've taken away from this.
And I would say I think that how much of the time you get to sort of rest and kind of just relax and then give yourself that space to breathe. You could say it's a great time to give yourself a spell, if we wanted to bring it all together right there.
Very good.
So thank you all so much for this conversation. I think that if Hogwarts is looking to expand and they want more innovative ideas, they they know the place to come to. It's Magical Learning. If they want to improve their magical learning, frankly. So I think I want to say thank you to everybody on the podcast today. What a fun episode. I feel like we've really broken it down. We've looked at it from such fun different angles. So thank you all to everybody that's been subscribing. Our YouTube channel's now over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you for that. We're building and people are really enjoying it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one as well. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.
Thanks, everyone.